Okay, we're going to get started. I'm really, really pleased to see you all. As these things go, there's a lot that goes into making something like this happen, and I'm very, very grateful to our team, our planning team. Their names are on the bottom of the program, so I won't take the time to thank them all, but I'm very, very grateful to the team that helped put this together. And I want to acknowledge our sponsors, the Group Foundation for Advancing Mental Health, and the Rochester Area Group Psychotherapy Society, Own Rochester with Kate Washington, Westfall Associates with Chuck Montanti, and Delphi Rise. So thank you to all the sponsors. I'd especially like to thank Dr. Ford for joining us today, Craig Waleed, and Danielle Ponder, and our poet from East High. Where are you? There's Bria. So welcome to you guys. As we do at these events, I'd like to ask you all to silence your cell phones, please, if you haven't already done so. My thinking about our culture and society right now is that we're really in the midst of a public health crisis with regard to mental health. And for that reason, I'm very, very glad to welcome Dr. Ford and to talk about the benefits of group psychotherapy, because my thinking is that group is a way to access care for a larger number of people in the same amount of time. And historically, group therapy has been thought to be sort of an inferior method of treatment, something you do when there's not enough individual therapists around. But my experience and my training tells me that group therapy actually can be quite superior to individual treatment, especially when it's in conjunction with some individual therapy as well. I tell the people that I work with, I'm a mental health professional, that I'm pretty good at what I do, but I can't offer you what a group can give you, a group of peers who meet together on a regular basis and talk. So I'm very, very pleased to support the Group Foundation for offering scholarships for young and new professionals in the field, and that's what the fundraising aspect is of this event today. I know that I started working as a group leader very, very early in my career, and I had very little training as a leader. And I managed to survive, but I'm very glad to have had a lot of training as a group leader and able to offer a much better product today. So we're supporting scholarships for new and younger professionals. Dr. Ford was interviewed on Evan Dawson today at 12 noon. She was fabulous. And it will be re-aired tonight, as they do on WXXI, or Evan Dawson has a podcast. So if you'd like to hear the interview or use it for teaching purposes with your staff, please avail yourself of that. I think I forgot to introduce myself. I didn't put that on my little list, so. My name is Chris Fitzstevens, and I'm a board member of the Group Foundation for Advancing Mental Health, and that is the fundraising arm of the American Group Psychotherapy Association. So the office, our headquarters as we call it, is in Manhattan, and I'm here representing the foundation. I'd like to welcome the agencies that are represented here that I know about. There's probably others that I'm unaware of. I just met someone who let me know. I don't see him right now. Anyways, we have someone from the Gandhi Institute. We have Rochester City School District educators here. By the way, those of you who are wanting PD credits from the RCSD, please be sure to sign your name on the list at the registration desk so we can let the RTA know that you've been here. We have someone from the Geneva Schools, from Wayne County Jail, from the Monroe County Probation Department, from the Forensic Psychiatry Unit at the university. Dr. Singh is here with us. We have staff from Westfall Associates and a representative from ROC ACT, which is a group that's done quite a bit of lobbying for prison reform in Albany. Is there anyone I've missed that you'd like to let us know you're here? And with whom? Oh, here's someone from NAMI. Wonderful. Welcome. That's the National Association of Mental Illness, is that right? Alliance. Thank you. Anyone else?
Well, we work at Rochester Psych Center.
Oh, wonderful. Wow. Great to have you. Rochester Psych Center. That's Bria's parents. And Bria's twin sister Brianna is here too. They're in the cool East High jackets. I also wanted to announce that we have a local group therapy society called the Rochester Area Group Psychotherapy Society, and they do a lot of wonderful local training in group therapy, and it's just usually just a one-day thing on a Friday, so the end of the week. And there is an upcoming training on September 20 to 21. Looks like that one's a 2-day. And we have Dennis Foley here, who is the president of AGPS, and if you're interested, you can talk to him about that, or there's a website, ragps.org. So without further ado, I'd like first to welcome Stephanie Dobbin to come speak with us for a couple of minutes. She's a former scholarship recipient, and she'll let you know a little bit about her experience. For any of you who'd like to apply for a scholarship, I would really invite you to do that. Because we're offering this event, Rochester area persons will have high priority. And most everyone who applies is helped. And this would be a scholarship to attend AGPA next year in March in Manhattan. This past year it was in Los Angeles, so it's a lot further to go. But it's a 5-day training. And we'd really love to have any agency persons or people who are interested apply. So, Stephanie, the floor is yours.
Hi, everybody. My name is, too close. My name is Stephanie Dobbin. I'm a marriage and family therapist here in Rochester in private practice. But before I was in private practice, I worked for 5 years at Evelyn Brandon, which some of you may know, a community mental health clinic downtown. So my very first AGPA experience was actually in 2016, and it was a very impulsive decision to go down to New York, based heavily on peer pressure. And so I did not have a scholarship my first time. I went down just for 2 days. And the sticker shock was high for New York City, and so the following fall, I decided, I'd heard a lot about the scholarship, and I decided to apply. And so it really enabled me at a time in my life when I was working in an agency and not necessarily getting paid particularly well, to be able to have some help to go back down and continue my group training. I was able to stay for an extra day, extend the time that I spent crying and learning about myself. If anyone hasn't been to AGPA, it's a very intense experience with a couple of days and a 2-day-long group workshop. And so I felt really grateful at the time to not have to feel super stressed financially to be able to get down there. And when I think about it now, I was actually thinking about it this weekend because now that I've left the agency and I'm in private practice, I've been able to devote some time and energy to studying groups at the Center for Group Studies in New York City. So I'm getting to go back 3 times a year right now. And this past weekend, I actually was in a process group with my institute leader from the year that I got my scholarship. And it was really exciting and meaningful to think back on how much has happened just in the couple of years since I got the scholarship and how I've been able to really get to know myself better and become a group leader myself. I have 2 of my own groups in private practice now. So I feel like that year between when I went really impulsively and then got the scholarship and got to go again was sort of the beginning of something really, really special for me. And I'm looking forward actually to getting to go back to AGPA next year. So I would definitely encourage anyone who is curious about what the experience is like to apply because, like you said, Chris, everyone I've known that's applied has gotten help too. So it's been cool to see that. I know a lot of my colleagues at the clinic also appreciated having the help. So thanks for having me today, and I look forward to our demo group and getting to know Dr. Ford. And thanks to Chris for inviting me.
Okay, so now we're going to go to the part of the program where we have folks from Rochester presenting, and Chuck Montanti is going to introduce Craig Waleed. Thereafter, Laura Delahanty will introduce our poet, and then Kate Washington from Own Rochester will introduce Danielle Ponder. Okay. Oops, sorry, Chuck.
Good afternoon. When Chris proposed this idea of this event and asked for support, I learned a long time ago when Chris was working at Westfall to follow Chris's directions. So I immediately did. And one of the things we wanted to do was to highlight what might be going on in this community. I was advised early on to not assume that no one knows about the issues that we're going to be talking about today in this community, that there must be good programs. At Westfall Associates, where I work, we tend to see people in the pretrial mode of the criminal justice system as opposed to the folks who wind up in the criminal justice system and incarceration. So I learned a long time ago, in addition to follow Chris's directions, to keep people who are smarter than me around me. And one of them is Carl Hatch-Fear over at Delphi Rise. So I immediately called Carl because I knew that they have a top-notch reentry program there at Delphi Rise. And Carl was kind enough to send Dr. Waleed my way. But I had an ego-crushing event a little while ago. Dr. Waleed came in and reintroduced himself. He didn't recognize me. He said, since we met over lunch, the lunch was much more attractive than me. I told you I was going to get you. I was very impressed with Dr. Waleed and his life experiences and his academic achievements, as I think you will be too. He's an experienced educator, counselor, and coach, and is really passionate about this idea of disrupting the community to prison pipeline, especially the school to prison pipeline. He got his doctorate in education in executive leadership only a couple of years ago at St. John Fisher, and his dissertation was, get this, aspects of emotional intelligence that help former prisoners make decisions to desist crime. Dr. Waleed currently works as an associate professor at Brockport, and he teaches introduction to counseling. And as an adjunct assistant professor at MCC, he teaches interpersonal speech communication. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Waleed.
Thank you, Chuck. He told me he was going to get me. I think that was a pretty light roast, so I can cope with that. But I'd like to greet each of you with the universal salutation of peace. And I'd also like to thank the planning committee for inviting me to share some of my thoughts and experiences with you today. For the better part of maybe the past 10 or 15 years, the bulk of my professional and academic work has centered around assisting justice-involved individuals with achieving a sense of balance and purpose and accomplishments. My services in this community has mostly been as a substance abuse counselor, a mental health counselor, career counselor, case manager, and a provider of residential supervision to incarcerated and post-incarcerated men and boys. In addition to that, as Chuck mentioned, I completed my dissertation in 2017, and before that, in 2010, I also wrote a graduate thesis exploring formerly incarcerated men's perceptions of community supports available to them upon their release. So, I first became inspired to work with people impacted by the criminal legal system while I myself was serving a 4 to 12-year prison sentence in the New York State Department of Corrections, or what I like to call the Department of Human Caging. I was in there for the charge of attempt murder in the second degree and assault first. I was 19 years old. I ultimately served 7 years and 10 months, and I was released on the day after Christmas, December 1997. Thank you. So it's been about 21 years since I've been out. But for myself, but not so much for myself, should I say, but for many others who are coming out of prison and staying out of prison after their release is something that's seemingly impossible to achieve. And so you think about it, after they've spent, or anyone who's been incarcerated for that matter, a significant amount of time exposed to the dehumanization that occurs in the prison environment, where the culture is ruled by aggression, hostility, violence, and fear. You think about that for a minute, and then understand that prison perpetually shocks and assaults the nervous system and the psyche of those who are exposed to it. So anyone who's there, from the person who's serving time to the administrator to the guards, it can't escape unscathed. No one escapes unscathed. So if you know or if you don't know, empathy and kindness and concern for others is almost non-existent there in prison. And essentially, prison is a place of debilitation where most people emerge from with significant psychological wounds and distorted perceptions of the world. So research confirms that incarceration can cause the onset of psycho-emotional crises or the exacerbation of pre-existing mental illnesses or mood disorders. So typically, prisons do not and cannot provide adequate psychiatric medications or treatment because mental health care has never been prison's mission. This has often resulted in brutal alternative options for treating the mentally ill who are incarcerated, including solitary confinement, restraining devices, and assault and battery by prison staff and other incarcerated persons, causing many incarcerated and formerly incarcerated people to experience similar symptoms to a post-traumatic stress disorder like those displayed by combat veterans. I know this because I lived through it every day, even 21 years after my incarceration. I think that the way people are treated, though, in prison is a public safety matter that should be of grave concern to everyone in our communities, because close to 95% of the people who are incarcerated will be eventually released one day. And if they've been punished and they've been abused, denied opportunity, and living under constant threats of violence, what skills, what behaviors, and what thinking patterns do you think they'll return to their communities with? Are they more likely to become an asset or a liability? Something to think about. So, my thinking about improving post-incarceration outcomes is to suggest for prisons and jails to begin treating those in their custody more humanely. So this includes the discontinuance of using harm and violence as a means of addressing harm and violence that may have caused many in their custody to be sent to prison in the first place. To use harm and violence, to address harm and violence, only creates a vicious cycle. It doesn't quell anything. It doesn't eradicate anything. It's like if you take one match and you put it next to another match, you only get a bigger fire, a bigger flame. So that's one thing I'm thinking about, to maybe change the treatment of people in prisons and jails. Another thing is that I think it's imperative that those who are in charge of the prisons and jails place more resources into therapeutic, recovery-oriented interventions that address broad sets of individual and environmental risk factors like addiction, medication adherence, stress and trauma, as well as housing, education, and employment needs. Housing and education and employment needs tend to be some of the top 3 things that are plaguing people who have been sent to prison and who are returning from prison. So ultimately, I think that by implementing some of my suggestions or similar suggestions to these would be a step in the right direction towards improving post-incarceration outcomes and public safety. Thank you for your time.
Good afternoon. My name is Laura Delahanty, and for the past 22 years, it has been my honor and privilege to both teach and learn from East High School students in the Teaching and Learning Institute. The Teaching and Learning Institute, or TLI for short, as we're known, is a 4-year magnet program for RCSD students interested in pursuing careers in the field of education. The program was designed to help the district grow our own and help diversify the teaching corps, because honestly, too many teachers look like me. I'm proud to say that many of our graduates are now teaching in the RCSD as well as other places around the country. Besides learning the nuts and bolts of effective teaching methods like lesson planning and classroom management, TLI students also study social justice issues so that they may be progressive educators committed to improving our world. This year in the TLI program, our students studied the school to prison pipeline, and students created spoken word pieces to share their truths and amplify the voices of youth. And so unfortunately tonight, one of our students couldn't be here, Jerome Grant, but it is my absolute proud honor to welcome Miss TLI Junior Bria Adams as she shares her poem entitled Retrospect. So Bria, take it away.
Oh Lord, I didn't know it was this many of y'all. Okay. My poem is called Retrospect. I named it Retrospect because my poem is about police brutality and just kind of looking back on like different events that happened. So, okay. This is dedicated to George Zimmerman and the Sanford Police Department who let him get away, the St. Anthony, Minnesota Police Department, the Independence Police Department of Ohio, and the Waller County Jail, who can't seem to tell the truth. Since Trayvon Martin died, it seems like a wildfire of unjust spread. How you still getting paid when someone's child is dead? The families accept your apologies, but I hope your grave is a nail-filled bed, and they close your racist mouth with a thick piece of thread. Remember Trayvon Martin. How can a white male be Superman when he can't survive the sun? Melanoma striking his body like the bullets did Valerie's son. Shot 7 times in front of a 4-year-old girl. He was the 449th murder that year. PTSD every time I see a cop. Black activists maneuvering communities until their bodies drop. Remember Philando Castile. You handed out free bullets to Tamir Rice Rice for waving a fake gun in the air. So if I wiggle my wallet up high, will you make me a millionaire? If I make my pencil dance, will I get free tuition for a year? Remember Tamir Rice. You hell of a species, you make everything our fault. With her height, it's obvious that it was an assault. How can someone hang themselves in a small metal box? Clear plastic bag, there's no truth to that picture. You retweeted hashtag say her name, then dismissed her. Remember Sandra Bland. You killed him illegally and got a slap on the wrist. You harassed him as if his feelings didn't exist. He said, I can't breathe 11 times, he never tried to resist. Why wasn't the real criminal indicted for the illegal crime he committed? With all the black males becoming extinct, this could have been predicted. Our views on the cops like tectonic plates shifting. Remember Eric Garner. So to my kin, if they catch me, make sure they shoot from behind. And make sure they use me as an example to finally look at the system to realign. To my people, I hope you reflect and rebind. The flag is drenched in our blood because we don't go down without a fight. Obituaries only last so long, but our loved ones are forever in our mind. We don't want an apology, we just want someone to do what's right. Remember me.
Wow, that's a tough act to follow. Thank you so much, Bria. Danielle Ponder is a musician and an attorney. A native of Rochester, New York, she performs internationally with her band Danielle Ponder and the Tomorrow People. She's a professor in the Department of African American Studies at State University of New York College at Brockport, where she teaches legal rights of the disadvantaged. At Northeastern University, where she received a Juris Doctor, Danielle was awarded the prestigious Public Interest Law Scholarship. Danielle worked for 5 years at the Monroe County Public Defender's Office, where she provided criminal justice to indigent defendants. While at the Public Defender's Office, she created a racial justice training curriculum for incoming attorneys. Danielle has dedicated the last 15 years to organizing and advocacy. She's worked on issues such as education funding, women's rights, and has spent the past 8 years advocating for criminal justice reform. Danielle has been highlighted by several publications, including the American Bar Association Journal, The Guardian. In 2017, she created the multimedia show For the Love of Justice, where she shines a light on our criminal justice system through powerful song and thought-provoking visuals. Join me in welcoming Danielle Ponder.
Thank you so much. I want to say thank you to Dr. Craig and to Bria for sharing that poem, sharing your story. I think for many people of color, the criminal justice system is a personal thing for us, and we have experienced trauma. And so it is very difficult to get into these spaces and share that trauma with folks. I'm just going to tell you a few things briefly. What I like to do is tell you a little bit about myself, and then to localize, and then I'll sing a song, because that's what I would always rather be doing. So when I was 16 years old, 2 things happened to me that really shaped the person that I am. The first was my father gave me a guitar, and it was a terrible beat-up box guitar, but I was like the only little black girl in the hood with a guitar, so I loved it. And the other thing that happened when I was 16 was that my brother was sentenced to 20 years to life for a robbery where the value of the item taken was $176. I remember being young and doing the math in my head, being 16 and thinking, oh my God, when Dwayne gets out, I'm gonna be 36. And if you know how a teenager works, being 36 meant I was like, my life was over at that point. But the experience, the reason my brother was sentenced to that amount of time is because the state's policies of mandatory minimums, or sometimes referred to as 3 strikes and you're out. But because of my brother's experience, I knew that I wanted to work in the criminal justice field. I left my job in May to pursue music full-time, but before that, I was a public defender. And I just want to tell you a little bit about our courts, because I really want to help us localize this conversation, that this is happening right here in the city of Rochester. I know we have like CSI 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and Law and Order, this, that, the third, but the courts that you see on TV are nothing like the courts in Rochester, New York. Our courts look more like my 16-year-old client who comes from a holding cell with his head bowed, his hands cuffed behind his back, to answer for his charge, riding his bike without a bell. It looks more like the fragile and shaking hands of my 71-year-old client, sentenced to 1 to 3 years in state prison for driving without a license. It looks like largely poor Black and brown folks being dragged into court to answer for largely minor crimes. And in our own jail, in Monroe County Jail, a majority of people that are in that jail are not held because they have been convicted of a crime, but they are held because they cannot afford bail. So this is a very local conversation that we need to have. And I always tell people I could not be a public defender if I did not also have music, because music saves me, it heals me, because what I've seen in those courts has been so heartbreaking and so frustrating to see. It's not uncommon in that court to hear someone suffering with a mental illness screaming, trying to figure out why they can't go home. And I just remember thinking how desensitized we've become to all of this. I would encourage all of you to go to city court and just spend a day to get an understanding of what is happening with your tax dollars. I wrote a song called Criminalized when I was in law school. Every time I do this song, I get a little nervous because I've sung this song and I've had people walk out of the concert. I get nervous because there's a line in this song where I say, I'm sick of cops. So I'm going to say that to you now so you won't be so shocked when I say it at the song. But the truth is, I have a lived experience, and I have a right to be angry because of that lived experience. And my other truth is, I am an artist. And as an artist, my job is to make you feel something. So I ask you, as you hear this song, to sit with the things that you feel and be curious about that. Easy for us to be criminalized when they thinking every Black that a criminal lie. We sick of cops with they criminal lies. You tell me who got the criminal mind. They got probable cause, reasonable suspicion, corrupt laws, corrupt jurisdictions. It's just a way to give you permission, harass us to oppressive conditions. It won't be long we take this condition, so let's be strong and hold our position. You see, fire is bound to come from friction, and you will soon meet the ultimate resistance. We know we shall win. We are confident, in the victory of good over evil. See, I have faith in the power of the people, the human need to be treated as an equal. There's only so much the bucket can take before the bucket feel and the bottom break. Treated like prisoners in our own land. They do these things from Brooklyn to Ferguson. Now let me tell you, man, understand the history of the policeman. Now I'm not saying that there ain't no good. I'm just saying respect our hood. Because we are grandparents, fathers, uncles, and sons, mothers and daughters. Don't you call us hoodlums. We know we shall win. For we are confident in the victory of good over evil. Well, we know we shall win. Lord, the victory of good over evil. Thank you so much.
It's a little hard to speak after that. Thank you.